You know that moment when your entire world flips upside down in front of 200 people? When the person you trusted most turns you into their punchline? I lived that nightmare at the Grand Meridian Hotel. My name is Daniel Parker, and I'm 34 years old. I run a boutique architecture firm here in Brookfield, designing the kinds of spaces people dream about. Or I did, until my wife Valerie decided a corporate gala was the perfect stage to pour red wine down my custom suit and call my life's work a cute little hobby. My wife of 7 years, the woman I'd supported through every promotion, every late night, every corporate crisis. She humiliated me while her colleagues laughed, and her boss, Morgan Whitmore, her married boss, stood there smirking like they shared some private joke. The rage I felt wasn't the kind that explodes. It crystallized into something diamond-hard and absolutely clear. I didn't retreat. I didn't beg for explanations. I promised her consequences, and I delivered them systematically. I dismantled her career at Westbridge Financial, exposed her 8-month affair with Morgan, and made sure both of them lost everything they valued. I fought legally, brutally, and completely. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who promised to stand beside you, you'll understand why the person who humiliates you publicly deserves to face public ruin. I got justice. I got revenge. And I rebuilt a better life from the ashes of her cruelty. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. I pulled into the Grand Meridian's valet loop just after 7, the hotel's glass facade blazing with light against the darkening sky. The custom navy suit I'd picked up last week fit perfectly. Tailored, sharp, the kind of thing that made me look like I belonged at these corporate events. I handed my keys to the attendant and straightened my silver tie. Valerie had been talking about this gala for weeks. Daniel, this is important. The CEO will be there, board members, everyone who matters. I need you looking sharp. Well, I looked sharp. The ballroom was exactly what you'd expect from Westbridge Financial. Crystal chandeliers throwing prismatic light across marble floors, waiters gliding past with champagne flutes, 200 people in designer suits, and $800 dresses networking like their lives depended on it. Maybe they did. I spotted Valerie near the bar, stunning in a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She was laughing with Morgan Whitmore, her boss. He was 42, slick in an expensive charcoal suit, with the kind of confidence that came from years of being untouchable in the corporate world. I walked over, navigating through clusters of executives, and smiled when I reached them. Valerie. She turned, and for just a second, something flickered across her face. Not quite annoyance, but close. Daniel, you made it. Of course I made it, I said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. She pulled back slightly, just enough to make it awkward. Wouldn't miss seeing you in your element. Morgan extended his hand, his grip firm, and measuring in that way men do when they're sizing each other up. Daniel, Valerie's told me about your architecture work. Boutique firm, right? That's quaint. Quaint. The word landed like a small insult wrapped in politeness. We do well, I said evenly. Just landed a contract for a community arts center. Oh, Morgan, don't tease, Valerie said, laughing, this sharp, performative sound that didn't match the woman I'd woken up next to that morning. Daniel does very well with his little projects. Little projects. I'd spent 18 months designing that arts center, but sure, let's call it little. The evening continued like that. Every time I tried to engage with Valerie's colleagues, she'd undercut me with dismissive comments. A VP from the investment division asked about my firm, and before I could answer, Valerie jumped in with, Daniel's very passionate about his work. It's adorable, really. Another executive mentioned seeing one of my residential designs featured in a local magazine, and Valerie waved it off. That was just a little feature. Nothing major, By 10 p.m., I was standing near the edge of the ballroom, nursing whiskey that burned less than the humiliation building in my chest. I watched Valerie hold court with Morgan and a cluster of senior executives, her hand touching Morgan's arm, her laugh carrying across the marble floor. That's when she walked over, wine glass in hand, her eyes slightly unfocused from too much champagne. Morgan followed, that same smirk plastered on his face. "Daniel?" Valerie said, her voice carrying just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Having fun playing wallflower?" "I'm fine," I said carefully, "just giving you space to network." She laughed again, that brittle sound scraping against my nerves. Space. Right. Because God knows you wouldn't understand the conversations happening here. This is real business, not sketching pretty buildings. The nearby conversations quieted. People were listening now, watching. "Valerie," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "What's going on with you?" "What's going on?" She gestured broadly, wine sloshing dangerously in her glass. "What's going on is I'm tired of pretending. Tired of dragging you to these events like some kind of accessory. Look at you, my house husband, my little architect with his cute hobby." Morgan snickered. Someone else laughed, and the sound rippled through the watching crowd. And then she did it. Valerie lifted her wine glass and poured it directly onto my chest. Red wine cascaded down my suit jacket, soaking through the white shirt underneath, dripping onto my shoes. The ballroom went silent, except for a few shocked gasps and scattered, nervous laughter. I stood there, feeling the cold liquid seep through fabric, staining everything I'd carefully put together for this night. I looked directly into my wife's eyes. She wasn't drunk. Not really. This was a choice. A calculated, cruel choice, made in front of 200 witnesses. Valerie laughed, turning to Morgan like they were sharing a private joke. "Don't be so dramatic, Daniel. It's just wine." Morgan put his hand on her lower back. Too familiar, too possessive, his fingers spread across the fabric of her dress like he had every right to touch her that way. "Come on, Val. Let's get you another drink." Val. He called her Val. The nickname I'd given her in college, the one that was supposed to be ours, was rolling off his tongue like he'd been using it for months. I watched them start to walk away together, her leaning into him, and something inside me went cold and clear and absolutely focused. My hands stopped shaking. The humiliation crystallized into purpose. I pulled out my phone and started documenting everything. Wide shots of the ballroom, the watching faces, the spilled wine pooling on the marble floor, close-ups of the wine stain spreading across my suit. Then I switched to video and captured Valerie and Morgan at the bar, his hand never leaving her back, their faces inches apart, whispering like the rest of the room didn't exist. I had my evidence. Now I needed my confrontation. I walked straight up to them, my footsteps echoing across the suddenly quiet ballroom. "Valerie," I said, my voice cutting through their conversation with lethal calm, "we're done here. Not just tonight. We're done. Permanently." She rolled her eyes, taking a fresh glass of champagne from the bartender. "Oh, please. You're embarrassing yourself, Daniel." I stepped closer, and something in my movement, or maybe in my voice when I spoke again, made her confident expression crack just slightly. "No, you embarrassed yourself. You poured wine on your husband in front of your entire company because you're fucking your married boss and needed an excuse to push me away. But here's what you didn't consider, Valerie. I'm not some doormat you can discard when it's convenient. I'm the man who knows every detail of your life, every password, every secret, every lie. And starting tomorrow, I'm going to systematically dismantle everything you care about." Morgan stepped forward, his corporate confidence faltering. "Hey, buddy, you need to calm down." "Shut your mouth," I snapped, turning to him with such sudden ferocity that he actually stepped back. The bartender froze mid-pour. "You're a married man with 3 kids, screwing your subordinate and thinking nobody will notice. Your wife's name is Diane, right? She volunteers at St. Luke's Church every Sunday. I'm sure she'd love to hear about your mentorship style." The color drained from Morgan's face completely. His hand fell away from Valerie's back. I turned back to Valerie, whose smugness had evaporated, replaced by something closer to uncertainty. "You wanted to show everyone who you really are tonight? Congratulations. I saw it." They saw it. I gestured to the watching crowd, dozens of her colleagues still staring, drinks frozen halfway to their mouths. "And now you're going to live with the consequences of that choice." I held her gaze for 3 more seconds, letting the weight of my words settle, then turned and walked toward the ballroom exit. My shoes squelched slightly with each step, wine still dripping from my suit jacket, but I kept my shoulders back and my pace measured. Behind me, I heard Valerie say something to Morgan, her voice sharp and panicked, but I didn't turn around. I was done giving her my attention. The lobby was cooler, the noise of the gala fading behind heavy doors. A valet near the entrance glanced at my wine-stained suit, but had the good sense not to comment. I stepped outside into the October night air, feeling the cold hit my damp clothes and clear my head even further. Wine-soaked, publicly humiliated, but absolutely certain of what came next. I walked to my car in the parking garage, got behind the wheel, and sat there for a moment in the silence. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, but they weren't shaking anymore. The rage that had burned through me in the ballroom had settled into something colder, harder, more useful. I pulled out my phone and started searching for hotels. The Riverside Hotel came up first. Decent reviews, close enough to the city, far enough from the house I'd designed for a marriage that no longer existed. I booked a room for the next 2 weeks, then opened my contacts and scrolled down to a name I'd saved months ago. Kevin Jensen, divorce attorney. I didn't call him yet. It was nearly midnight, and what I had to say needed to be said during business hours, clearly and deliberately. But I drafted the email anyway, sitting in my car with wine drying stiff on my shirt. "Mr. Jensen, my name is Daniel Parker. I need to file for divorce immediately. My wife publicly humiliated me tonight at a corporate event, and I have reason to believe she's been having an affair with her married supervisor. I have photo and video evidence. I need the best representation available, and I'm prepared to move forward aggressively. Please contact me at your earliest convenience." I read it twice, then hit send. Then I started the car and drove toward the Riverside Hotel. My mind already planning the first moves of a war Valerie Robinson didn't yet realize she'd started. I woke up in the Riverside Hotel room at 6:30 the next morning, the kind of sharp, instant wakefulness that comes from pure adrenaline. The wine-stained suit was draped over a chair where I'd left it, a reminder of everything that had happened 12 hours ago. I showered, changed into clothes I'd grabbed from the house before leaving last night, and sat down with my laptop. Google search. Best divorce attorney in the state. Kevin Jensen's name appeared in the first 3 results. Reputation for being ruthless, expensive, worth every penny. Perfect. His office answered on the second ring. I explained I needed an emergency consultation, that I was willing to pay whatever fee was necessary. The receptionist put me on hold, came back 2 minutes later with an appointment at 11 a.m. I spent the next 3 hours drafting a timeline of everything: dates, events, the progression of Valerie's late nights and business trips, the gala humiliation, every detail I could remember. I attached the photos and videos from last night, emailed the entire package to Kevin's office, then drove downtown. Kevin Jensen's office was exactly what I expected. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with legal volumes, the kind of space that projected authority and success. Kevin himself was 50-something, silver hair perfectly styled, sharp eyes that missed nothing. He gestured to a chair across from his massive mahogany desk. "Mr. Parker," he said, shaking my hand with a firm grip, "I reviewed the information you sent over. Your wife poured wine on you at a corporate event in front of witnesses? 200 of them," I said, "including her boss, who she's been having an affair with." Kevin's eyebrow raised slightly. "You have proof of the affair?" I slid my phone across the desk, pulling up the videos and photos from the gala. Valerie and Morgan at the bar, his hand on her lower back. The intimate way she leaned into him. Their faces inches apart, while I stood across the ballroom, soaked in wine. Kevin studied each image carefully, his expression neutral but focused. "This is excellent circumstantial evidence, but we need more. Corporate affairs are tricky. We need documentation, emails, text messages, hotel records, something that proves the relationship violated professional boundaries." "I can get those," I said. Kevin looked up from the phone, his gaze measuring. "Mr. Parker, I need to be clear about something before we proceed. If you're seeking revenge, that's not what I do. But if you're seeking justice and protecting your assets, I'm the best there is. I want both," I said simply. "She humiliated me in front of her entire company. She betrayed our marriage. She's going to lose everything she cares about. But I want it done legally, completely, and devastatingly." Kevin smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the cold, calculating expression of someone who'd seen everything in 30 years of practice and knew exactly how to win. "Then we're going to get along just fine. Here's what we're going to do." He pulled out a legal pad and started outlining the strategy. "First, secure concrete evidence of the affair. Not just photos, but communications that proved the relationship was ongoing and violated Westbridge Financial's ethics policies. Second, file for divorce citing infidelity and emotional abuse, using the Gala incident as documented proof. Third, go after the assets aggressively." "Tell me about your financial situation," Kevin said. "We own a house together in Brookfield. I designed it. Market value is probably around $800,000. We have joint investment accounts worth about $400,000, but 200 of that came from my grandfather's inheritance. I put it into our joint account 3 years ago." Kevin made notes. "We can recover the inheritance. Courts generally recognize that as separate property, if we can trace it properly." "What about income disparity? She makes about $300,000 a year as a senior VP. I make around 90 from my architecture firm." "Good," Kevin said. "Income disparity works in your favor for asset division. Now, the real weapon here is Westbridge Financial's ethics policy. If your wife is having an affair with her direct supervisor, they're both violating company standards in ways that could end careers." I leaned forward. "How does that help the divorce?" "Character evidence," Kevin said. "Professional misconduct, abuse of power dynamics, willingness to violate ethical boundaries. It all paints a picture of someone who prioritizes personal gratification over integrity. But more importantly, if we expose the affair to Westbridge's compliance division, her career implodes. She loses her income, her status, her leverage. What do you need from me?" "Hard evidence," Kevin said. "Email exchanges, text messages, anything showing the relationship violated professional boundaries. Can you access her communications?" I nodded slowly. "She uses her laptop for everything. She's careless about security. I know her passwords. I set up our home network." Kevin held up a hand. "I'm not telling you to hack your wife's computer. That would be illegal. But if you happen to discover evidence on shared marital devices during the normal course of your life, devices stored in the marital home that you have authorization to access, well, that's different." I understood perfectly. Kevin stood, extending his hand again. "Get me that evidence, Mr. Parker. Once we have it, we file immediately and go for the throat. I'll prepare the initial paperwork. You focus on building the case." I shook his hand. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Kevin said. This is going to get ugly. Your wife will fight back. Are you prepared for that? Absolutely, I said. That evening, I sat in my hotel room and stared at my car keys on the nightstand. Valerie would still be at work. She always worked late on Fridays. The house would be empty. I needed to go home. I needed to access that laptop. I needed to finish what Valerie started when she poured that wine. The house stood dark when I pulled into the driveway that evening. Valerie's car was gone, still at the office, or maybe with Morgan, or wherever people went when they were destroying their marriages. I used my key and stepped inside. The place felt different now. I'd designed every angle, every window, every line of this house. I used to walk through these rooms and feel pride. Now I felt nothing but cold, sharp purpose. I found her laptop in the study, right where she always left it. Password protected. But I knew the password. I'd set up the damn thing 2 years ago when she got promoted and needed better hardware. She'd never bothered changing it. Within 20 minutes, I had full access to her email and Westbridge Financial's internal chat system. The messages between Valerie and Morgan went back 8 months. 8 months of lies while I cooked dinner and asked about her day and believed we were building something together. They weren't even trying to be subtle. Last night was incredible. When can I see you again? I can't stop thinking about you, Val. Dinner Thursday? The usual place? My husband is traveling next. Want to come over? I downloaded everything, thousands of messages, dozens of explicit photos they'd exchanged. Valerie in hotel rooms I'd never seen, wearing lingerie I'd never bought her, hotel receipts charged to Morgan's corporate card, calendar entries for strategy meetings and client dinners that lined up perfectly with Diane's volunteer schedule at St. Luke's. I backed it all up to 3 separate USB drives and sent encrypted copies to Kevin's secure email address. Then I found something even better. An email chain between Valerie and someone named Jasmine Adams, Westbridge's HR director, from 3 months ago. Valerie had filed a formal complaint against another employee, Thomas Wright, for having what she called an inappropriate relationship with his assistant that creates a hostile work environment. The emails showed Valerie pushing hard for Thomas's termination. She'd been relentless, writing follow-up after follow-up, insisting the company needed to maintain professional standards and show zero tolerance for ethical violations. Thomas had been fired within a week. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. She'd destroyed someone's career for the exact thing she was doing. Except Thomas's situation had been between peers, while Valerie was sleeping with her direct supervisor. She'd ruined a man's life while conducting an affair that violated every policy she'd cited in her complaint. I saved that evidence, too. I sat there in the study, staring at the screen, and felt something settle deep in my chest. This wasn't just proof of an affair anymore. This was proof of who Valerie really was. Someone willing to destroy others while doing far worse herself. Someone cruel enough to weaponize company policy against an innocent man while violating those same policies. Kevin would know exactly what to do with this. I stayed in the house, turned off all the lights, sat in the living room in the dark, and waited. Valerie came home just after midnight. I heard her car in the driveway, her key in the lock, her heels clicking across the hardwood floor. "Jesus, Daniel, you scared me," she said, when she flipped the light switch and saw me sitting there. "What are you doing here?" "I live here," I said calmly. "Or did you forget?" She dropped her bag on the counter with more force than necessary. "Look, about the gala—" "Save it," I interrupted. "I didn't come here for an apology. I came here to tell you I've filed for divorce." She froze. The color drained from her face in stages. First confusion, then disbelief, then something that might have been fear. "You what?" "Divorce. I filed this morning. You'll be served in a few days, but I wanted you to hear it from me first. Professional courtesy." Valerie's mouth opened and closed. Her hands gripped the counter edge. You can't be serious. Because of one stupid incident. One stupid incident? I stood up slowly, my voice sharp as broken glass. You poured wine on me in front of your entire company. You called my career a hobby. You humiliated me publicly because you're too much of a coward to admit you've been screwing your married boss for 8 months. Her face went white. Actually, white. How did you? How did I know? I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Valerie, I'm not an idiot. I've watched you come home later and later. Smelled cologne that wasn't mine. Noticed how you stopped wearing your wedding ring on business trips. But I had proof within 24 hours once I started looking. You went through my computer? Her voice rose, indignant and desperate. That's illegal. Actually, it's not, I said. It's our shared marital property, and as your husband, I had every legal right to access files on our home network. My attorney was very clear about that. But thanks for confirming the affair. I wasn't 100% certain until just now. She grabbed the counter to steady herself, knuckles going white against the granite. Daniel, please. We can work through this. Marriage counseling, therapy. We can fix this. No, I said simply. The word hung in the air between us like a blade. You made your choice at that gala. You chose humiliation over respect. Morgan over me. Your career over our marriage. Now you get to live with those choices. You bastard, she hissed. And there it was, the real Valerie, the one who'd been hiding behind that polished corporate mask. You think you can just divorce me and walk away? I'm the one who makes the money. I'll destroy you in court. I laughed, actually laughed, and the sound made her flinch. Valerie, sweetheart, you're going to lose everything. The house, the investments, your reputation, and most importantly, your precious career. See, Westbridge Financial has very strict ethics policies about supervisor-subordinate relationships. You and Morgan have been violating those policies for 8 months, and I have every email, every photo, every hotel receipt proving it. The blood drained from her face completely. You wouldn't. I already did, I said, and watched her world crack open. My attorney sent a comprehensive dossier to Westbridge's Ethics Compliance Division this afternoon. 8 months of documented evidence, messages, photos, expenses charged to Morgan's corporate card. Everything. She just stared at me, mouth open, processing. And here's the beautiful part, I continued, stepping closer. Remember Thomas Wright? The guy you reported 3 months ago for having a relationship with his assistant? The one you got fired within a week because you were so concerned about maintaining professional standards? Valerie's hand went to her mouth. Yeah, I said. I have all those emails, too. The ones where you pushed HR to terminate him, where you talked about zero tolerance and ethical violations. Really inspiring stuff, Valerie. I'm sure the ethics board is going to love comparing your crusade against Thomas to your 8-month affair with your married boss. Daniel, by Monday, I said, cutting her off, you and Morgan will both be under investigation. Given that you personally reported someone for doing far less than what you've been doing, I imagine Westbridge will be very eager to show they enforce policies consistently. Can't have the senior vice president getting special treatment, right? That would look terrible. She sank into the nearest chair, her whole body shaking. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against her face. Daniel, please. My career, everything I've worked for? Should have thought about that before you poured wine on me, I said, and my voice could have frozen hell itself. Should have thought about that before you let Morgan put his hands all over you while I stood there, humiliated, in front of 200 people. You made me look like a fool, Valerie. Now the whole world gets to see what kind of person you really are. She started crying, these desperate, gulping sobs that would have broken me a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. Now I felt nothing. Not sympathy, not regret, just cold, perfect satisfaction. "I'll be staying at the Riverside Hotel until the divorce is finalized," I said. "My attorney will be in touch about asset division. Don't try to empty our accounts or hide money. We've already secured protective orders." "And Valerie?" She looked up at me, mascara running, face blotchy. "Stay away from me. The next time we speak, it'll be in court." I walked out of that house, the one I'd designed, the one that was supposed to be our future, and I didn't look back. 2 weeks after I walked out of that house, I sat across from Brody Taylor at a coffee shop 3 blocks from Westbridge Financial's headquarters. The place was quiet, mid-morning lull. Just us and a few laptop warriors claiming corner tables. Brody stirred his coffee slowly, looking around out of habit before he spoke. "They're taking this seriously, Daniel. More seriously than I've seen the company take anything in years." "Tell me," I said. "Morgan was placed on administrative leave within 72 hours of the complaint hitting the ethics board." 72 hours? I've never seen them move that fast. Brody leaned forward slightly. "Valerie got reassigned to a different division. They pulled her off every major project she was running. She's basically sidelined." I felt something warm and sharp settle in my chest. Not quite satisfaction yet, but close. "What about the investigation itself?" "The CEO is furious," Brody said. "Morgan's been untouchable for years, you know? Golden boy, big revenue generator, board favorite. But screwing a subordinate while she's reporting other people for the exact same thing? That's a PR nightmare waiting to explode. They can't protect him from this, and they know it." "What about Valerie?" I asked. "What's her play?" Brody grimaced. "She's trying to claim Morgan pressured her, playing the victim card, saying there was a power dynamic, that she felt she couldn't say no because he was her boss." I almost laughed. "And they're buying that?" "Not even a little," Brody said. "The emails you provided, Daniel, they show her as an enthusiastic participant, initiating contact, planning trips, sending photos. There's no coercion there. Just 2 people who knew better deciding the rules didn't apply to them. And Thomas Wright? That's the real killer," Brody said quietly. "Valerie went after him hard 3 months ago, pushed HR to terminate him within a week for a relationship that didn't even involve a power imbalance. Now she's trying to claim she was pressured into her own relationship with her direct supervisor? The hypocrisy is staggering. The board sees it. The CEO sees it. Everyone sees it." I took a sip of my coffee. "So, what's the likely outcome?" Brody met my eyes. "Off the record? There's serious talk of terminating both of them. The board doesn't want the liability. They don't want the headlines. Westbridge Financial VP fires employee for relationship while conducting affair with married boss. That's not exactly the kind of press they're looking for." I smiled. Couldn't help it. "Daniel," Brody said carefully, "I know she hurt you, but are you sure you want to go this far?" I set my cup down. She poured wine on me in front of her entire company and called my life's work a hobby. She betrayed our marriage, humiliated me publicly, and tossed me aside like garbage. "Yeah, Brody, I'm absolutely sure." He nodded slowly. "Then you should know. It's probably going to happen within the next few weeks. Once they finish interviewing everyone, once they document everything, they're going to let both of them go. Perfect." 1 week later, I sat in Kevin Jensen's conference room for Valerie's deposition. The space was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a massive mahogany table that could seat 20, leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Valerie showed up looking like hell. The polished corporate executive I'd married was gone, replaced by someone haggard and worn. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back hastily, a tension in her shoulders that screamed exhaustion. Her attorney, Fred Garcia, looked nervous. He was competent enough for routine divorces, I figured, but this wasn't routine. This was a massacre in slow motion. Kevin didn't waste time. "Mrs. Parker, Can you describe the events of October 14th at the Westbridge Financial Gala? Valerie's voice was stiff. I was celebrating with colleagues. My husband attended. And what happened during that celebration? She hesitated, glancing at Fred. We had an argument. An argument, Kevin repeated, his tone perfectly neutral. Is that what you call pouring a glass of red wine on your husband in front of 200 witnesses? Fred objected weakly, something about relevance, but Kevin was already sliding printed photos across the table. Clear shots of Valerie laughing while I stood there soaked, Morgan's hand possessively on her back, people watching with shock and amusement. You humiliated your husband publicly, Kevin continued. You called his career, his successful architecture firm, a cute hobby. You referred to him as a house husband in a derogatory manner. Then you physically assaulted him by pouring wine on him. Is that accurate? I didn't assault him, Valerie snapped. It was just wine. Just wine, Kevin said flatly. He slid more photos across the table, close-ups of Morgan's hand on Valerie's lower back, her leaning into him, their faces inches apart. And can you explain why, immediately after this incident, you were photographed in intimate proximity with your supervisor, Morgan Whitmore? Valerie's jaw clenched. Morgan is my boss. We were talking. Kevin pulled up a printed email, enlarging it so everyone could read. Were you also talking when you sent him this message 3 weeks before the gala? I watched Valerie's face as she read her own words. Can't wait for our weekend in Charleston. I told Daniel I have a work conference. He's clueless. The color drained from her completely. Fred tried to recover. My client declines to answer on the grounds that it may violate company confidentiality agreements. Too late, Kevin said. He opened a thick binder and began laying out pages. We have over 800 messages between Mrs. Parker and Mr. Whitmore documenting their extramarital affair. Hotel receipts, explicit photographs, calendar entries showing meetings that coincided with Mr. Whitmore's wife being out of town. Your client committed adultery, Mr. Garcia. And under state law, that significantly impacts asset division. The deposition ground on for 3 more hours. Kevin methodically destroyed every defense Fred tried to mount, presenting evidence so comprehensive that there was simply no counterargument. Valerie cried twice. Fred sweated through his shirt. Kevin calmly itemized every asset we'd be claiming. The house, my inheritance, compensatory damages. I sat there silent, watching my wife crumble under the weight of her own choices, and felt only cold vindication. 6 weeks into the divorce proceedings, my phone buzzed with a forwarded email from Brody Taylor. Subject line, Internal Memo, Confidential. I opened it standing in my hotel room, morning coffee in hand. After a thorough investigation, Westbridge Financial has determined that Senior Vice President Valerie Robinson and Executive Vice President Morgan Whitmore engaged in an undisclosed romantic relationship in violation of company ethics policies. Both employees have been terminated effective immediately. Westbridge Financial maintains a zero-tolerance policy for supervisor-subordinate relationships and is committed to maintaining professional standards. I read it twice. Then I sat down slowly on the bed and read it a 3rd time. Valerie lost her job. The VP title she'd worked 60-hour weeks to earn. The corner office, the expense account, the 6-figure salary. Gone in one morning. Everything she'd built her identity around, stripped away because she couldn't keep her hands off her married boss. The satisfaction was overwhelming. 3 days later, Brody sent me another update. Diane Whitmore had filed for divorce from Morgan. Apparently, she'd been suspicious for months, and the termination gave her all the evidence she needed. She's going scorched earth, Brody told me over the phone. House, cars, custody of the kids, alimony that'll leave him broke for years. Morgan's life is over. Good. They both deserved everything coming to them. That's when Valerie started calling. The first voicemail came 2 days after her termination. Her voice was sharp, angry. "Daniel, this has gone far enough. You've destroyed my career. Isn't that enough? Call me back." I deleted it without responding. The second message, 3 days later. "Daniel, please, we need to talk. You got what you wanted. I'm sorry, okay? I'm so sorry. Can't we just stop this?" Delete. The third, "How can you be so cruel? I lost everything because of you. My job, my reputation, everything. You're destroying my life." I listened to that one twice before deleting it. She still didn't get it. She'd destroyed her own life the moment she poured wine on me in front of 200 people. I was just making sure everyone else saw what I'd seen that night, who she really was. Then, 4 weeks after the termination, Kevin Jensen called me into his office. His expression was grim when I walked in. "We have a problem," he said, without preamble. My stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Valerie's attorney filed a motion this morning. They're claiming you obtained evidence illegally, that you hacked her work laptop without authorization. They're arguing the laptop was company property, not marital property, and that you exceeded authorized access." Kevin tapped the motion on his desk. "If the judge agrees, all the emails and messages get excluded from the divorce proceedings." I felt the floor shift under me. "But you said accessing marital property was legal." "It is," Kevin interrupted, "but they're making the argument that her work laptop wasn't marital property. It was Westbridge's property, and that you had no right to access it. If the judge buys that argument, we lose our best evidence. Without it, this becomes a he said, she said situation, and asset division gets much more complicated. Can they win?" My voice came out rougher than I intended. Kevin grimaced. "It's 50-50. Judge Nelson McKinley is presiding, and he's unpredictable. Conservative on some issues, liberal on others. This could go either way. The carefully constructed revenge I'd built, the evidence, the documentation, the comprehensive proof of Valerie's affair and hypocrisy, it could all vanish because of a technicality. So what do we do?" I asked. "We argue that you had implied authorization to access shared devices in the marital home," Kevin said. "That there was no reasonable expectation of privacy for personal communications on a device stored in the home. We'll argue that the evidence shows a pattern of behavior relevant to the divorce. But Daniel, I'm not going to lie. This is a real threat. The hearing's scheduled for next Wednesday. 7 days. 7 days to wait, and wonder if Valerie would somehow escape consequences, if she'd walk away with half of everything while I got nothing. Those 7 days were the longest of my life. I barely slept, running through scenarios, imagining Valerie's smug expression when the judge excluded my evidence, watching my entire case crumble. The night before the hearing, I was in my hotel room, staring at the ceiling, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello? Daniel, it's Thomas Wright." I sat up, surprised. Thomas Wright, the guy Valerie had gotten fired 3 months before the gala. "Thomas, how did you get my number?" "Brody Taylor," he said. "He thought I might be able to help you. I heard about your divorce, about Valerie trying to get your evidence thrown out." "And I want to testify," Thomas said, his voice steady and determined. "I want to tell the judge exactly what kind of person Valerie Robinson is." The courthouse hallway smelled like floor polish and anxiety. I sat on a wooden bench outside the courtroom, waiting for Kevin Jensen to arrive, my stomach tight with tension. 7 days of barely sleeping, imagining every possible outcome, and now it all came down to the next hour. Thomas Wright sat 3 benches down, dressed in a button-down shirt and slacks, looking as nervous as I felt. He'd driven 2 hours to be here, and I still wasn't sure if his testimony would make any difference. But at least someone else would tell the truth about who Valerie really was. Kevin appeared at 9:40, briefcase in hand, looking as sharp and composed as ever. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be," I said. We walked into the courtroom together. The space was cold, sterile, fluorescent lights humming overhead, blank walls, rows of empty benches. Judge Nelson McKinley sat at the bench, 60-something with gray hair and a stern expression that gave nothing away. He looked like someone who'd heard every excuse and saw right through all of them. Valerie sat at the defense table with Fred Garcia, her attorney. She looked nervous, pale, dark circles under her eyes. Good. She should be nervous. Morgan wasn't there, probably dealing with his own divorce proceedings, his own destruction. I took my seat beside Kevin. My heart hammered against my ribs. Judge McKinley glanced at the docket. "We're here on a motion to exclude evidence filed by the respondent, Mrs. Parker. Mr. Garcia, you may proceed." Fred stood, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, we're asking the court to exclude all evidence obtained from Mrs. Parker's work laptop. The laptop is property of Westbridge Financial, not marital property, and Mr. Parker had no authorization to access it. The evidence was obtained illegally and should be excluded from these proceedings." Judge McKinley looked at Kevin. "Mr. Jensen?" Kevin rose smoothly. "Your Honor, before we address the admissibility question, I'd like to call a witness who can speak to the character of Mrs. Parker and the nature of workplace relationships at Westbridge Financial." Fred shot to his feet. "Objection. This witness isn't relevant to the question of evidence admissibility." "I'll allow it," Judge McKinley interrupted. "But keep it brief, Mr. Jensen." "Thank you, Your Honor." I called Thomas Wright. Thomas stood, walked to the witness stand, and was sworn in. His hands shook slightly, but his voice was steady. Kevin approached him. "Mr. Wright, were you employed by Westbridge Financial?" "Yes, for 6 years. I worked in the investment analysis division." "And did you have a relationship with a co-worker during your employment?" "Yes, with Jennifer Matthews. We worked in different departments, same level. We dated for about 4 months." "And what happened when Mrs. Parker learned of this relationship?" Thomas's jaw tightened. "She reported me to HR, said I was violating company ethics policies. I was fired within a week." "Were you Ms. Matthews' supervisor?" "No. We were peers, same level, different departments. There was no power imbalance at all." "What happened to Ms. Matthews?" "She was transferred to a different division. She broke up with me shortly after. Said the whole situation was too much." Thomas paused. "I lost my job, my girlfriend, and my reputation, all because Valerie Parker decided my relationship was inappropriate." Kevin turned to Judge McKinley. "Your Honor, Mrs. Parker destroyed this man's career for having a consensual relationship with a peer. Yet, she herself was engaged in a relationship with her direct supervisor, Morgan Whitmore, for 8 months. The hypocrisy is staggering. The evidence Mr. Parker obtained doesn't just show an affair. It shows a pattern of deception and willingness to ruin others while engaging in worse behavior herself." Judge McKinley looked at Valerie with undisguised distaste. "Mrs. Parker, did you file a complaint against Mr. Wright?" Valerie stood reluctantly. "Yes, Your Honor, but—" "And were you, at that time, engaged in a relationship with your supervisor?" Silence. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Valerie's mouth opened, closed. She looked at Fred, who gave her nothing. "Mrs. Parker," Judge McKinley repeated, "were you in a relationship with your supervisor when you filed that complaint?" More silence. Her face had gone completely white. Judge McKinley shook his head. "Mr. Garcia, your motion to exclude evidence is denied. Mr. Parker accessed devices in the marital home, and the evidence is relevant to these proceedings. Furthermore, I find Mrs. Parker's conduct, both in her treatment of Mr. Wright and her public humiliation of her husband, to be reprehensible. This court will take that into account during asset division." Kevin caught my eye and gave a tiny nod. We'd won. 8 weeks after the hearing, my phone rang. Kevin Jensen's name lit up the screen. "Daniel, he said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. I have the final decree from Judge McKinley. I sat up straighter in my hotel room chair. And? It's extraordinarily favorable. You receive the house outright, the full $200,000 you inherited from your grandfather, plus $75,000 in compensatory damages for emotional distress. I exhaled slowly. And Valerie? She keeps her car and her 401k. That's it. No alimony, no shared assets, nothing. Nothing, I repeated. Daniel, I've been practicing law for 30 years. That's one of the most one-sided settlements I've ever seen in a no-fault divorce state. Judge McKinley really didn't like your ex-wife. Good. She earned every bit of his disapproval. Thank you, Kevin, for everything. You fought for what you deserved, he said. I just made sure you got it legally. After we hung up, I sat there for a long moment, letting it sink in. Victory. Complete, total, devastating victory. The next few months, I watched Valerie's world continue to crumble from a distance. Without her Westbridge income, she couldn't afford that luxury downtown apartment anymore, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river. She moved into a small studio in a less desirable neighborhood. I heard about it through Brody, who still kept me updated occasionally. Her professional network evaporated. Nobody in corporate finance wanted to be associated with someone terminated for ethics violations. The whispers followed her everywhere. The woman who destroyed a colleague's career for doing less than what she was doing herself. Morgan's life collapsed even harder. Diane took him to the cleaners, the house, primary custody of their 3 kids, alimony that would keep him broke for years. Morgan ended up working as a regional sales manager for a mid-tier insurance company, making about a quarter of what he used to earn. His corner office became a cubicle. His expense account became brown bag lunches. His kids barely spoke to him. Diane made sure they knew exactly why their family fell apart, why Daddy didn't live with them anymore, why Mommy cried at night. Valerie eventually found work as a junior consultant at some small firm, making $60,000 a year, a fraction of her former VP's salary. The designer clothes, the luxury car leases, the 5-star restaurants, all gone. And me? My life took a turn I never expected. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I attended an architecture expo downtown. I was presenting my community arts center project, the one Valerie had called a little project, with that dismissive laugh in her voice. That's where I met Ellie. Ellie Hansen was a project manager for a sustainable development company. We started talking about green building practices, and within 20 minutes, I'd forgotten I was at a professional event. We just clicked. She had this genuine enthusiasm, this warmth that I hadn't experienced in years. She'd been divorced herself 2 years earlier. She understood what betrayal felt like, how it hollowed you out and made you question everything. We started dating casually. Coffee that turned into dinners, museum trips, long walks where we talked about everything and nothing. She never pushed, never demanded. She just let things develop naturally. She was nothing like Valerie. Nothing at all. 2 years after that gala, I'm 36 years old. My architecture firm employs 8 people now. We're working on a major mixed-use development downtown. Residential units, commercial space, green roofs, the whole package. The Community Arts Center project that Valerie mocked? It just won a statewide design competition. Ellie and I got engaged 3 months ago. We're planning a small wedding. Close friends, family, no corporate galas required. She's incredible. Supportive in ways I didn't know were possible. She loves me for exactly who I am, not for what I can provide or how I make her look. We live in the house I designed. Ellie planted a garden in the back, and we spend weekends working on renovation projects together. It's filled with laughter now, warmth, actual partnership. And Valerie? She's 42 now, working a junior consulting position she hates, living in that cramped apartment, driving a used sedan, carrying the professional reputation of someone who got fired for ethics violations. Morgan barely speaks to his kids. Diane made damn sure they knew why their family fell apart. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how hard I went after Valerie, if I think I took it too far, destroyed her too completely. You know what? I don't. Not even a little bit. She didn't just cheat on me. She publicly humiliated me, dismissed my career as a hobby, treated me like an embarrassment, and threw away 7 years of marriage for a sleazy affair with her married boss. She destroyed Thomas Wright's career for doing far less than what she was doing herself. She showed me exactly who she was that night at the gala. Cruel, selfish, hypocritical, willing to hurt anyone to feed her own ego. I just made sure the world saw it too. Justice isn't always pretty. Sometimes it's brutal, systematic, absolutely devastating. But it's necessary. Valerie wanted to treat me like garbage? Fine. She got to experience what it feels like to lose everything that matters, while the person she betrayed thrives. I sleep perfectly well at night. Better than I did during the last year of our marriage, that's for sure. And if Valerie is out there somewhere, struggling to rebuild a life from the ashes of her own arrogance and cruelty, wondering how everything went so wrong, good. She earned every single consequence. I poured the foundation of my revenge with the same precision I use in architecture. Carefully, deliberately, built to last. Valerie thought she won that night at the gala, thought she could humiliate me and walk away victorious. Instead, she lost absolutely everything. And I rebuilt a better life than anything we ever had together. That's not revenge. That's justice. And it's the sweetest feeling in the world. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.